The summer of 2025 hit southern China with relentless, punishing rain, a deluge that seemed to have no end in sight. For weeks the skies remained a heavy, unbroken gray, and the sound of rain became a constant backdrop to daily life. This was no ordinary monsoon. These storms were far beyond the usual seasonal downpours, shattering records and expectations alike. Streets became canals, forcing residents to wade through waist-deep water while cars and buses vanished beneath the surface. Rice paddies, once vibrant with green, disappeared under a blanket of muddy floodwater, threatening the year's harvest and the livelihoods of countless families. Daily routines, commuting, shopping, even gathering with neighbors, dissolved into chaos and uncertainty. In towns across Guizhou, Guangxi, and Hubei, the story was heartbreakingly similar. Hard-won stability and years of progress swept away overnight by the unstoppable force of water. Water invaded homes and businesses indiscriminately, soaking treasured belongings and turning the once comforting sound of rain into a warning of disaster. Families watched helplessly as their memories and livelihoods were swallowed by the rising tide. Major rivers swelled to monstrous proportions, their currents accelerating with terrifying speed. The river Lu, in particular, surged to over 80 times its normal flow, transforming into a churning, unstoppable force that threatened everything in its path. Bridges collapsed under the pressure, roads disappeared beneath the floodwaters, and entire communities found themselves isolated within hours, cut off from help and hope. Red alerts flashed urgently across phones and public screens as the government scrambled to respond, but the scale of the flooding was unprecedented, overwhelming emergency services and leaving many to fend for themselves. 13 major rivers exceeded warning levels, their waters spilling from Yunan's misty mountains to the wide floodplains of Henan, painting a picture of devastation across the landscape. This was more than just bad weather, it was a national test of resilience and unity, pushing people, communities, and infrastructure to their absolute limits. Volunteers and rescue workers braved dangerous conditions, risking their lives to help neighbors and strangers alike. The summer of 2025 became a season defined by water's overwhelming force, a time when nature's power reshaped lives, landscapes, and the very spirit of southern China. Towering over the Yangtze, the Three Gorges Dam stands as a symbol of China's ambition to control nature. Built to generate power and crucially to prevent catastrophic floods, it promised safety for millions downstream. By holding back floodwaters during the rainy season, the dam acts as a buffer, protecting economic heartlands like Wuhan and Nanjing. But its reach is limited. It can't control floods in tributaries or distant river systems like the Pearl River Basin. The events of 2025 exposed this limitation. The dam is just one tool in a vast, complex system. Floods struck far beyond its influence, challenging the idea that engineering alone can tame nature. The crisis forced a reckoning with the belief that massive infrastructure could guarantee security. In 2025, the dam's promise was tested and found incomplete. Rongjiang, at the meeting point of three rivers, has always been defined by water. For generations, these rivers brought life, trade, and a sense of identity to the city's people. But in June 2025, the very lifeblood of Rongjiang turned against it. As relentless rain battered the region, Rongjiang became the face of the 2025 floods, a symbol of both devastation and the struggle to endure. In just 3 days, the city was hit by double its average June rainfall. The downpour was so intense that drainage systems failed, and the rivers burst their banks, overwhelming neighborhoods and turning familiar streets into vast, churning lakes. Water climbed relentlessly into homes and businesses, destroying cherished possessions, family memories, and livelihoods. The city was effectively cut in half, with entire districts isolated by the floodwaters. The beloved village Super League football pitch, once a symbol of hope and community pride, disappeared beneath the flood, its goalposts barely visible above the water's surface. Years of progress and hard work seemed to vanish overnight. Tourism, once a growing industry, and local businesses ground to a halt, their futures uncertain as the city struggled to cope. Authorities responded with a massive evacuation effort. Over 40,000 people were moved to safety in a single day, and more than 120,000 in total. The scale of the operation was unprecedented for the region. Families fled with only what they could carry, wading through waist-deep water, leaving behind homes, pets, and the city that had shaped their lives. The rivers that once sustained Rongjiang now threatened to erase it, The trauma of sudden displacement was profound. In crowded shelters, people faced uncertainty, anxiety, and the daunting task of rebuilding their lives from scratch. Rongjiang's story echoed across the region, a city's hope submerged, its resilience tested, and its future hanging in the balance as the waters slowly began to recede. Rongjiang's disaster was just one chapter in a nationwide crisis. Across China, the summer of 2025 would become infamous for its relentless record-breaking floods, testing the resilience of communities from the south to the north. In Guangxi's Meilin township, floodwaters rose over 4 meters, submerging homes nearly to their rooftops. Entire neighborhoods vanished beneath muddy water, leaving families stranded on upper floors or rooftops, waiting desperately for help as the rain kept falling. Hundreds of kilometers away, Henan's Taiping saw a river burst its banks without warning, unleashing a deadly flash flood. 5 lives were lost, and 3 more people vanished in the chaos, as torrents of water swept through streets and fields in minutes. Emergency workers raced to rescue survivors, braving dangerous currents and collapsing infrastructure. But the speed and violence of the water left little time for coordinated action, forcing teams to improvise and make split-second decisions. In Guangxi, relentless rain triggered a fatal landslide, burying homes and cutting off entire villages from the outside world. The ground itself seemed to give way, as hillsides collapsed under the weight of saturated earth. Meanwhile, Hubei's Xianfeng County endured a month's rain in just 12 hours, forcing 18,000 people to evacuate. Families waded through waist-deep water, clutching what little they could carry, as entire communities were uprooted overnight. Each region faced unique threats. Some battled slowly rising rivers that crept into homes over days, while others were struck by sudden flash floods or devastating landslides that arrived with little warning. The variety and unpredictability of these disasters made response efforts even more challenging. The government's resources were stretched thin, revealing vulnerabilities in both rural villages and bustling cities. Emergency teams worked around the clock, but the sheer scale of the crisis exposed gaps in preparedness and infrastructure. The summer of 2025 made one thing clear: no part of China was immune to extreme weather. From city streets to remote farmlands, the floods left a trail of destruction that spanned provinces and touched millions of lives. The crisis demanded tailored responses, not one-size-fits-all solutions. Local leaders and rescue teams had to adapt quickly, learning from each disaster and sharing strategies to protect their communities. Nature's unpredictability overwhelmed even the best-laid plans, reminding everyone that adaptation and resilience are more important than ever in the face of a changing climate. Behind the devastation of 2025 was a driving force: climate change. Warmer air holds more moisture, turning ordinary storms into record-breaking downpours. The flood's intensity and spread matched climate models predicting more erratic, concentrated rainfall. Rural areas with aging levees and limited defenses suffered most as once-in-a-century floods became routine. Landslides and flash floods struck with little warning, overwhelming communities. The strain on dams and levees raised fears of catastrophic failures. The 2025 floods were a stress test for China's infrastructure and a warning of what's to come. The climate's new volatility demands urgent adaptation. The true toll of the floods was measured in shattered lives, not just statistics. Fatalities mounted: 6 in Guizhou, 5 in Henan, 2 in Gansu, each a personal tragedy. Mass evacuations uprooted over 120,000 in Rongjiang and 18,000 in Hubei in a single day. Families abandoned homes and livelihoods, facing the trauma of sudden displacement. Economic losses were devastating: ruined shops, destroyed crops, and billions in property damage. For many, the loss meant starting over from nothing. Even after the waters receded, thick mud and health risks remained. The cleanup was grueling, and the psychological scars ran deep. Fear lingered with every dark cloud, as communities wondered if disaster would strike again. Recovery would take years, and resilience would be tested anew. Early warning is vital in the fight against floods. China's advanced weather monitoring can forecast regional storms, but pinpointing local disasters remains elusive. Mountainous terrain and volatile weather make flash floods hard to predict. The gap between broad alerts and street-level warnings is where lives are lost. Climate change is making storms more unpredictable, outpacing historical models. Even the best systems can be caught off guard by sudden extreme rainfall. Bridging the information gap requires better technology and community-based alerts. In the race against rising waters, every minute and every warning counts. The 2025 floods reignited debate. Are massive dams like Three Gorges enough to control floods? While the dam shields megacities from the Yangtze's worst, 2025's devastation came from countless smaller floods beyond its reach. The crisis showed that centralized solutions can't address decentralized climate-driven threats. Experts now advocate for sponge cities, urban designs that absorb rain, not just channel it away. Restoring wetlands and floodplains in rural areas offers natural buffers. Dams remain vital, but they're not enough alone. The future demands a blend of hard engineering and nature-based solutions. Flexibility and adaptation are key to resilience. The lesson: work with nature, not just against it. As the floodwaters recede, China faces the daunting task of recovery and adaptation. Extreme weather is now a recurring reality, not a rare anomaly. The old reliance on massive infrastructure is no longer enough. Future flood management must be agile, localized, and integrated with nature. Investments in forecasting, community warnings, and land use planning are essential. Building resilience means supporting people, not just building walls. The hardest-hit communities were often the most vulnerable, linking climate resilience to social equity. The 2025 floods are a humbling reminder of nature's power and humanity's limits. The path forward balances engineering, ecology, and local action. Navigating this new normal will define the century ahead.